Jiang and Jiyu Kaishan were flying on the sword. Our boy's mind was filled with questions and curiosity. He extended his hands and asked if he could practice the techniques of all the races of heaven. Jiyu Kaishan crossed his arms, began to gaze toward the ground, and replied that this was a question even he could not answer since many had tried to take this path. But almost no one had managed to succeed because the techniques practiced were in conflict with the heavenly Tao. The master revealed that Ying Zan had been the only one in hundreds of years from Great Xia who had succeeded. Jiang started looking down with a lost gaze and began to think. Even if he had talent like Ying Zan, not even Jiyu Kaishan had the ability to teach him the techniques of the 10,000 races of the abyss. Ying Zan was a descendant of the human emperor of Great Xia, and back then the emperor of humanity had led troops to counterattack the 10,000 races, capturing many of the beasts. Now things had changed since the martial god Jiang only focused on defending the entrance that connected to the realm of the 10,000 races. Jiyu Kaishan activated his power, causing the sword to shoot out like lightning. If our boy could obtain first place on the list of geniuses, he would try to use his authority to transfer some units from the capital. Upon hearing this, Jiang couldn't help but feel happy. Sometime later, night fell and Jiang Chen went to his apartment located in the city. He opened his palm, causing it to begin releasing Xiao Jia's energy. Jiang started observing this, and his eyes filled with joy, making a smile appear on his face. The journey to the ancient god's corpse had been very useful since his insects had eaten and grown significantly. That night, Little Nine's offspring and Xiao Jia's red beetles could reproduce again. At that moment, the ancestral tree of all things appeared behind our boy. Upon feeling this, he couldn't help but go into shock, and his eyes widened in surprise. He couldn't believe there was movement in his divine consciousness. In the tree, there was a new green fruit never seen before. Now that the ancestral tree of all things had borne fruit again, Jiang realized that the reason behind it was due to the increase in the number of insects. Jiang's eyes filled with surprise. He approached the tree and extended his hand. And the fruit began to fall into his palm. He was somewhat confused and surprised since he had never seen a green fruit before. The statistics window of the fruit appeared. It was a green lightning fruit. It could grant the user the opportunity to awaken the unique hidden profession known as Sovereign of Electricity, granting 3 abilities. The first one called Lightning Bolt, which allowed the user to transform into an electric current and teleport within the electrical field generated by themselves, ignoring obstacles. The current range of this electrical field was 50 meters. The second ability was called Ray Fusion, which allowed the user to absorb electrical energy and store it in their own cells to later release it in a fierce attack. The third and final ability was called Divine Judgment. The user's palm would transform into a source of electricity, instantly releasing an electric current. Upon seeing the statistics, a joyful smile spread across Jiang's face. With this fruit, he would be able to obtain a second profession and become a divine-level spiritual master with the power to manipulate electricity, becoming a job changer with dual class. While our boy was distracted thinking, the system informed him that the breeding of insects had been completed. The red beetle now had offspring of 30,000 hatchlings. And the 9 miasma wings now had offspring of 12 million hatchlings. Then, an explosion appeared behind him, causing the sky to fill with small beetles. Little Nine was furious. Now that Xiao Jia had reproduced, she gave him the order to leave. Jiang's body began to emit a powerful aura, making his eyes fill with excitement. He couldn't help but smile, realizing that this increase in power was thanks to Xiao Jia's new offspring. Jiang's statistics window appeared. He was level 36 and in the second transformation, with the title of Sovereign of Insects. His current professions were Divine-level Spiritual Breeder and Sovereign of Electricity. Our boy had 2 talent classes. The first class included Universal Growth, Divine Evolution, and Ancestral Tree of All Things. The second class included Hidden Lightning, Lightning Fusion, and Divine Judgment. Jiang's skills were Human Sword, Earthly Sword, Heavenly Sword, and Great Tao of the Sword. He also had 2 calamities, the Insect Mother Little Nine at level 36, with a progeny of 12 million insects, and Xiao Jia at level 32 with a progeny of 30,000 insects. His current strength was 409 points, his agility was 428 points, his energy was 379. His constitution was 498, and he had a combat evaluation of 41. 0 stars. The energy around his body became more intense. He clenched his fist and focused on the status window. Thanks to the reproduction of the insects, in addition to the sovereign of electricity. His combat strength had also increased, and thanks to the characteristics of the red armor beetle, his constitution had almost doubled compared to before. His eyes began to shine intensely. He punched the air, making electricity appear around his arm. He couldn't help but smile because even though in the prodigy competition he wouldn't be able to use Little Nine's power. With his new class and new abilities, he would be able to sweep through an area without much effort. And if all this didn't work, in the worst case scenario, he could use Seogea's power and unleash the dark demon. It was nighttime in the mountains of Keen Luo's war zone. In the depths of Kinling, there was a powerful blue dragon flying through the sky. Somewhere in the mountains, there was a group of men and a woman sitting. In front of them stood a large wooden table. The powerful dragon descended to the ground. And a black-haired man wearing a summer shirt got off the beast. The others were somewhat surprised to see that the man had arrived. With a forced smile, he asked them not to exaggerate since they were indeed punctual compared to him who had come all the way from Guanghai, mentioning that he was exhausted. The woman who had her eyes closed turned towards him, and with a cheerful smile mentioned that it was surprising to see someone from Guanghai dressed in this way. While everyone else wore formal clothes, the two of them were protectors of the country, so she didn't understand why there was such a difference between them. The grey-haired man sitting next to her began observing them and with a smile mocked her by saying that in this world, if they talked about sarcasm and oddities, she was number one. He didn't even bother to take a seat with the others. He sat on top of the dragon's body, turned towards them, and explained that people from Guanghai simply valued ostentation. Upon hearing this, they started arguing, but just then the muscular man forcefully struck the table and with an angry expression ordered them to stop and decided it was time to talk about the main matter. The long-haired man placed his hand on his shoulder, indicating that he should not lose his composure. Everyone remained silent. And the old man revealed that the competition of celestial geniuses had a different situation compared to last year. Besides the strongest region, which was the capital, there were also Madu in Jianganyong. Jianganyong not only had Jiang Wuxiang but also Jiang Chen had appeared, who possessed strength superior to the geniuses of Madu. The old man's eyes filled with seriousness, he began staring intently at the man and revealed that previously the war district of Jianganyong used to join forces with them to face Madu and the capital together, but this year they had no intention of allying with them. The grey-haired man intervened, began to observe the old man, and mentioned that his old friend Xiao Yuanshan had been inexplicably exiled to the underground abyss. With a cheerful smile, the woman extended her hand and asked if this year's plan was to join forces to eliminate Jianganyong first, since anyway, before the 6 war zones had united to confront the capital without gaining much advantage. Upon hearing this, the others thought Xing was right and that it was better to fight for second place than for first. The old man decided to hold a vote. Those in favor of joining forces could raise their hands. The grey-haired man raised his hand, saying that the Wuxing war zone was in favor. Xing from the Tianfu war zone also raised her hand. The muscular man from King Lan's 9th war zone also raised his hand. Everyone raised their hand except the man wearing the summer shirt. He was Yuanzhen Tian. The others asked why he was not in favor of joining forces. Yuanzhen Tian stuck his finger into his ear and his eyes filled with contempt and hatred. Asking if they had finished discussing, he began to gaze at the ground and with a smile revealed that this time he had not come to form an alliance with them. He approached them, slammed the table hard, and with a confident smile made it clear that this summer in the Darkseer Genius competition, the Guanghai War District was going to win. Everyone remained silent except for the grey-haired man, his attention fixed on Yuanzhen Tian. With an angry expression, he asked why he was talking nonsense. He mentioned again that his war district was going to win the Darkseer Genius competition. Saying these words felt very good to him. The eyes of the grey-haired man filled with rage, causing him to clench his fist tightly, crushing the glass. Xing opened her eyes and with a furious gaze began staring intently at Yuanzhen Tian. He decided it was time to leave and climbed onto the dragon. The dragon opened its mouth and started flying at great speed. Yuanjun Tian placed his arms behind his back and, with a smile, told them not to worry as he would no longer bother them nor inform anyone about this. The muscular man began gazing toward the table and asked the others if Yuanjun Tian had hit his head. The grey-haired man extended his hand, explaining that surely he had been kicked by a donkey or perhaps he had an ace up his sleeve they were unaware of. They decided to stop thinking about the matter. The old man grabbed the glass and his attention fixed on it. With a serious look, he mentioned that as long as they, the 4 great war zones, joined forces and formulated a perfect plan, Jinganan would soon be defeated. Somewhere in Kujang was the dangerous city of Wuxian. On top of the cliff were members of the Church of the Ancient God. While several men were prostrated, their leader, a man wearing a red cape, approached the cliff and began observing the city. He asked how things were going for the Divine Sun, questioning if they had discovered any unusual movements. One of his men told him not to worry since the great Divine Sun had successfully descended as the first genius of Guanghai's war district and had gained full trust and support from Yuanjun Tian, Guanghai's national protector. With the current strength of the great Divine Sun, he was bound to obtain first place in the ranking of geniuses. Upon hearing this, a smile spread across the leader's face since the supreme honor of Dahlia had been snatched from the Church of the Ancient God. He extended his hand towards the city. He wanted to see the expressions of the invincible protectors of the country. Now, the entire plan had already begun to take effect. All that remained was to wait for the competition for ranking among geniuses to begin, something that would attract everyone's attention in Dahlia. He extended his hands toward the sky, and his body began emitting an evil energy, revealing that at that moment, a beast tide was about to sweep through all of Kujang. Upon sensing this energy, all members of the cult clasped their hands together, saying that with Kujang's sacrifice, the ancient god would return. The next day, in Jinganan's war zone's central plaza, geniuses who were going to participate in the competition gathered. In front of them was a large screen and only one day remained before the competition commenced. Du Enfi, who had his arms behind his back, decided to repeat the rules he had mentioned before for those who did not remember them. Among the participants was our boy. With a curious gaze, he began to observe Du Enfi in silence. He had not been present in Jinganan, so he realized that he was going to repeat the rules for him. Du Enfi activated the screen and with a serious expression explained that in the competition of geniuses, there were a total of 8 great war zones, with 80 celestial geniuses. The competition was divided into 2 rounds. The first round was in teams. The small teams from the 8 great war zones entered a secret realm in Kim Yu's area to fight among themselves, eliminating 4 war zones with the fewest survivors. In this round, what was evaluated was teamwork, and no matter how strong one might be, if they could not protect their teammates they would lose. Everyone was somewhat surprised and started talking among themselves. Jiang remained calm and with a tranquil gaze started thinking. Du Enfi revealed that in the secret realm they were not going to be able to hide, since if someone stood still, they would be struck by lightning. Additionally, the range of the secret realm was going to shrink every hour and people outside the circle were going to be directly eliminated. Even though they died in the secret realm, they would be able to revive afterward. Jiang's eyes filled with excitement, causing a smile to spread across his face. If he stayed still, he would be struck by lightning, which was going to be perfect for using his new class and accumulating electricity. Thinking about this made his body start emitting thunder. One of the boys next to him couldn't help but feel somewhat surprised. The second round was an individual ranking battle. After the elimination from the first round, around 30 people were expected to remain in this round. Matches were going to take place. The rules were simple: whoever wins advances and whoever loses is eliminated. Du Enfi turned towards them and with a serious gaze asked them to choose the team captain. Everyone started talking among themselves and our boy felt that many gazes were going to focus on him. Just then, Liu Sandao and Mu Hengqiu appeared behind them and with a smile formed a heart with their arms, saying that they wanted Jiang to be the captain. Our boy couldn't help but feel somewhat embarrassed. He put his hand over his face and tried to pretend as if he didn't know who they were. Dao Jiang began to smile. He extended his hand to form a heart with his companion, saying that they also wanted Jing to be the captain. His friend did not form the heart, he simply turned towards him, gave a thumbs up and with a sincere expression mentioned that he also agreed with the idea. Jing couldn't help but feel somewhat confused, although deep down he knew he should feel happy. Bai Feng and Jing Wuxiang were also present. With a calm gaze, Bai Feng explained that he and Tang Ying wanted Jing Wuxiang to be the captain, since although Jing Cheng was very strong, after all, Jing Wuxiang was more stable. Jing Wuxiang's gaze fixed on our boy. He didn't know why everyone wanted him to be the captain. A girl who was next to Jing mentioned that she also wanted Jing to be the captain because he was very handsome. The blonde-haired man joined her. Jing started touching his head with his hand and with a forced smile explained that he didn't know who they were. The woman placed her hand on her chest and with a tender expression introduced herself as Li Bing. The blue-haired boy began pointing to himself with his thumb and with a confident smile introduced himself as Prince. Jing Wuxiang approached our boy, placed his hand on his shoulder and with a kind smile he also decided to vote for Jing just to lighten the mood. Jing snapped out of his trance, turned around and upon seeing this, he couldn't help but start sweating. He placed his hand on his chest, sighed, and explained that he didn't want to be the captain because he couldn't handle so much pressure. Everyone remained silent while on the other side Duanfeng got angry. With an enraged expression, he asked Jing to stop acting in front of him since it would take him another 800 years to fool someone like him. Now that everyone trusted him, he had to do it well. Jing took several steps back and his attention fixed on Duanfeng. He was somewhat surprised to see the reaction of this old man. Duanfeng extended his hand to one side and a staircase made of ice appeared. He began observing them, revealing that the Jinganan war zone had been intimidated for many years. This time changing their fate depended on them. This staircase led to the teleportation space. It was a gift for them. He wished them success in every way. The king of the celestial sword would be waiting for them above. He would act as the representative of the country, and would accompany them to the Keen Luo base. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, please subscribe our channel, like and share the video. Welcome to our channel. In the war zone of Kinluo, there was a large green island, full of trees known as the entrance to the Eternal Kingdom. Somewhere on the island were all the military commanders from all the war zones. Among them was Saixun Yu's father, who had his hand under his chin and was watching attentively. Next to him was Jiyu Kaishan, who began staring at the screen, waiting for Yong and the others to arrive. A while later, Yong and the others arrived on the island. Luo Sandout turned toward our boy and with a cheerful look mentioned that the king of the celestial sword was seated in the first row of Zhengzhou district. Yong's attention turned to the side. With a calm expression he mentioned that this was easy to understand, and he noticed that the sealed King Ji Hongyan was also present. A question came to his mind. He did not know why he too was sitting in the Zhengzhou district. Behind them was Mu Hengqiu. She began to gaze at the ground silently. Just then, Saixun Yu appeared, while she was red as a tomato. She placed her hand on her arm, looked away and explained that the reason was that currently the war zone of the Magic City had no national protector, so her father would take charge. Upon seeing Saixun Yu, Luo Sandout and Mu Hengqiu's eyes filled with fury. They stood in front of Yong and started covering him with their arms. She was a captain of an enemy team, and they thought she was trying to win over Yong. Upon seeing their behavior, the mind of our boy was filled with confusion. He remained silent, not knowing what to do or how to act. A crack opened in the sky, and a giant flying ship appeared. On the ship were several men, a general, and another man with white hair. They were from the war zone of the capital, and the combat power of the ship could be compared to the level of an 8th rank protector of the country. Fang Zhenghao was the national protector of the capital and feared that others would not know how great and powerful his family was. The star of the capital, Ying Zan, jumped off the ship. His eyes were full of determination, and his body was radiating a powerful energy capable of making even the most powerful feel fear. Everyone recognized the legendary Ying Zhang, who had an extraordinary presence. Just then, another crack appeared in the sky, and although the people of the capital were very arrogant in terms of style, the war district of Guanghai was not far behind. A powerful golden dragon with several heads emerged from the crack, and it was carrying a giant coffin with chains. On top of the dragon was a man wearing a summer shirt. It was Ying Zhan Tian, his eyes spread with joy. And with a confident smile, he extended his hand toward the coffin, announcing that his team called Rebirth Towards Death was going to emerge from the coffin. The coffin fell on top of the dragon and began to break into pieces. The coffin fell to the ground, but just then, the participants from the Guanghai war zone emerged. Among them was a man with long hair. Ying Zhan Tian revealed that this year, the first place was going to belong to their war zone. Now that all the participants had arrived, a giant portal appeared, and while some were entering, others stayed silently observing. The first round consisted of a team battle. Out of 8 major war zones, 4 were going to be eliminated. Within the secret realm, the survival area would shrink every hour, and if any team remained motionless, they would be struck by thunder as punishment. Everyone entered the portal, and the last team was Jinganan's team. Jing and the others began scanning the area. This place was a forest with abandoned buildings. This was the area where the team battles were going to take place. Jing was the captain, so the others asked him what to do now. The portal disappeared in the sky. Jing's eyes filled with confusion. He turned to Bai Feng and asked what they meant. With a serene gaze, Bai Feng extended his hand and explained that among the 8 major war zones, the probability of participating in this was 1 in 1,000. If they wanted to eliminate their opponents, then they had to find a way to take initiative first and gain an advantage. Everyone remained silent, thinking about what to do now, while on the other side, Mu Henkyu began staring at Bai Feng and couldn't help but feel furious. She asked how he could speak like that to the captain, demanding that he show more respect, just before things could escalate to another level. Jing intervened and placed his hand on her head, closed his eyes, and with a forced smile thought that Bai Feng was right, since in a situation like this it was better to get organized. Our boy reached into the storage space and asked everyone to wait. Seeing this, everyone felt happy, thinking that the captain had already made some preparations. Jing took out a sofa, meat, vegetables, and a grill. He sat on the ground, rested his hands on his knees, started observing them, and decided it was time to begin. The others began to observe in silence, naming everything Jing had taken out of the system's storage space. Luo Sandao, Bai Feng, and Tang Ying were shocked and open-mouthed, and it didn't take long for them to realize that Jing wanted to organize a barbecue. Our boy started putting the meat on skewers. Mu Henkyu clenched her fists and couldn't help but feel furious, and even though Jing did almost everything right, according to her this was a bit inappropriate. Luo Sandao sided with her, saying that now was not the time to be having barbecues since it was a matter of life or death. Tang Ying turned around and put her hand over her face out of embarrassment. She knew that although our boy had many virtues, he was not made to be the team leader. Jing's eyes filled with surprise and confusion upon seeing his team's reaction. Bai Feng approached, and his attention fixed on the skewers. With a confused gaze, he questioned whether Jing did not remember the rules. If they stayed still, they would be struck by lightning. The mind of the man standing next to him filled with surprise. He could not believe that Jing was behaving this way in a situation like this. Our boy put the meat on the skewer and casually said that he already knew the rules, but eating a little barbecue wasn't going to be a problem since, after all, only by being full did one have the energy to fight. Jing Wushuing placed his hand on his jaw, and his eyes spread in surprise. For him, Jing had come up with a wonderful idea. With a smile, he decided to help prepare the barbecue. Jing Wushuing and our boy sat down and started preparing the barbecue. The others were somewhat confused upon seeing that he had also joined Jing. According to them, the team shouldn't have 2 such unreliable people at the same time, or perhaps there was a deeper meaning behind this. Liu Sandao clenched her fists, and her eyes filled with joy. She finally understood what Jing meant. Little by little everyone began to believe that this made sense. The man who was next to her put his hand under his chin and with a smile thought that Jing was brilliant, while the man who had his arms crossed couldn't help but feel excited. Everyone decided to listen to the captain and help. A red-haired girl grabbed a skewer and, with a happy gaze, started putting slices of roasted potatoes on it since it was her favorite dish. Jing, who was sitting behind them, turned toward her and his eyes filled with confusion. His expression changed. He was somewhat surprised to see that everyone had agreed on having a barbecue. The reason he had decided to make one was because he was hungry. Ever since the small insects had started reproducing again, his appetite had been insatiable. He wasn't afraid of being struck by lightning since this way he could recharge his ability. But seeing the expressions of his companions now made things no longer seem as simple as they appeared. While he was distracted, Mu Hangqiu approached him and with a smile explained that now she also understood it. Thinking that Jiying's thoughts were too deep. She was very foolish and hadn't thought it through well. With a calm expression, Jiying asked what she had understood. In response, she put her hand behind her head, closed her eyes and explained that everyone had understood Jiying's plan, and if she said she didn't understand it, she'd look foolish. Jiying couldn't help but fall into confusion not knowing what was happening. After preparing the skewers, Jiying Wushuing placed them on the grill. The strategy our boy was using had only appeared once in history. If he hadn't reviewed the lists of geniuses from hundreds of generations ago, he really wouldn't have understood it. He didn't expect our boy to make such an effort for this evaluation. To him, he was a captain worthy of the title. He started cooking the skewers and his gaze fixed on Jiying. He thought that Jiying's plan was to wait calmly to attack those who were exhausted. It was like pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger. Although it was a good plan, it was extremely risky. Jiying wasn't afraid of everyone joining forces against him. Feeling Jiying Wushuang's gaze, our boy began observing him silently, not knowing what this guy was plotting. Jiying Wushuing started wondering if this was what they called an invincible heart. For him, it wasn't surprising that his grandfather had asked him to approach Jiying and observe him closely. Compared to him, what Jiying Wushuing lacked wasn't talent or strength but the determination not to fear anything. Jiying's eyes began to shine with seriousness. He asked why Jiying Wushuing was looking at him so intensely. Wushuing, who was grilling the skewers, mentioned that he wasn't as good as him. Jiying stood up and told him that his skewers were burning. The screen started showing everyone that Jiying Wushuing and our boy were preparing skewers. Everyone remained silently watching. Fu Kaishan's eyes filled with rage and disappointment. He couldn't believe that while others were preparing or investigating, Jiying was having a barbecue. He thought he had learned it from Hong Yao. As a captain, he was leading others astray. Being in embarrassment, he didn't know how Jiying would be able to face old Duan afterward. The red-haired man named Fang Zhenghao couldn't help but laugh. He mocked him, saying that this time Jiying Nan had prepared very well. Upon hearing this, Zai Zinu's father's attention was fixed on him and his eyes filled with fury. This also caught the attention of Jiyu Kaishan, who turned around and began staring at him intently. Several years ago, during the competition, the human emperor had massacred many of his opponents using the dragon sword. When he was young, he had deliberately stopped in one place, waiting for lightning to strike him so that later he could lure 4 teams to investigate, leading to a battle where he massacred everyone. All of this had been carried out entirely by himself. His ferocity, his bravery, his determination made people admire him. Many years had passed, and no one had been able to achieve a feat like his. Fang Zhenghao's eyes filled with confidence as he mocked them, saying that they had first learned things like chicken droppings and dog excrement. According to him, they didn't deserve it. The others intervened, explaining that a deserter like him couldn't say such things. The man crossed his arms and began to laugh. Zai Zinu's father placed his hand on Jiyu Kaishan's shoulder and, with a forced smile, asked him not to get angry. Despite being somewhat furious, he decided to comply and remain silent. Someone caught the attention of the others by revealing that the war zones of Qin Luo, Wu Xiang, King Lan, and Tian Fu were going to unite again and that the capital was going to face a big problem. Jiyu Kaishan started staring at the man with a piercing gaze, mentioning that this generation of geniuses was not weak and that the capital was indeed going to have problems. The man extended his hand and with a confident expression made it clear that a group of useless people would not be able to stand up to the geniuses of the capital. The screen began to display a map. Jiyu Kaishan stood up and it didn't take long for him to realize that the 4 elite regions didn't seem to be aiming at the capital, but rather at Jinganan. They didn't want to attack the strong. They wanted to go after the weak. Fang Zhenghao couldn't help but laugh upon seeing that they had finally learned something. For him, this was going to be a good show to watch. Somewhere in the secret realm, there was a group of men. One of them started looking to one side and with an alert gaze revealed that he had found Jinganan's group. They couldn't believe they were having a barbecue and also had no defenses around them. This was something unusual, so they realized something wasn't right and thought they were setting up a trap. The long-haired man's eyes filled with confusion upon seeing that they were hungry in a situation like this. Tianfu's number one pride, the team captain named Liu Oshun, clenched his fist and began releasing powerful energy. His attention focused on Jing and the others. He told his men to stop arguing. No matter what Jing's team did, they should advance directly according to plan. They still had comrades standing guard, so they'd be able to defeat them quickly. The 20 elites would divide into 3 groups. Their group would mainly focus on containing Jing Weishuang, while Wu Qingqing's group would be responsible for taking down Jing Chen. The first celestial genius of Kai Luo, named Wu Qingqing, extended her hand and summoned some daggers. Her eyes were shining with confidence, and although Jing mastered calamities, he could not use them here. As long as they did not give him the chance to unsheath his sword, defeating him would be easy. But the task of Dan Lishuang's group was going to be the most arduous and required taking care of the rest of the group. The first genius of Wuxian, named Dan Lishuang, clasped her hands together and began using her powers, making water appear. With a gaze full of determination, she vowed to purify them all. Liu Ocean's eyes filled with excitement. He gave Liu Hang the order to use the portal to help the others. The number one genius of Qinglan, Liu Hang, extended his hand and made a portal appear. While they were preparing to attack, Jing and the others were eating. Wu Caxan's attention was fixed on the screen, and he couldn't help but sweat. The enemy was already less than 500 meters away, and yet they hadn't detected them. To him, this made no sense because even if Jing hadn't noticed it, Jing Oshun should have. And if this continued like this, they were going to end up dead. The other generals couldn't hail but feel happy. The grey-haired man mentioned that Liu Hang's hidden ability in the spatial system was unparalleled. The muscular man crossed his arms and started laughing, mentioning that Wu Yadu was the best assassin in the world. The woman said that Lishuang was the first goddess with an aquatic class in all of Daxia. The white-haired man also joined in. He forcefully hit the table with his fist and said that Liu Oshun was the best strategist. All of the geniuses' gazes fixed on Jing, who was sitting on the sofa eating as if nothing had happened. Jing Oshwang stood up and couldn't help but go on alert. He didn't expect the enemy to arrive before they were struck by lightning. He turned towards Jing, who was enjoying some good skewers. The enemy was less than 100 meters away, and he couldn't believe that Jing still hadn't done anything about it. He came to the conclusion that Jing hadn't noticed the presence of the enemy. Jing grabbed a piece of meat and took a bite. Now their enemies were less than 10 meters away. Liu Oshun thought they had victory assured. But just then, Jing threw the meat, put his hand near his mouth with an unpleasant expression, and started spitting. He didn't know who had roasted the claws of the fierce beasts since they weren't even cooked. The roasted claws hit Liu Oshun's face, his eyes filled with fear as he began observing Jing without knowing if he'd been discovered. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, please subscribe our channel and like and share the video. Welcome to our channel.